It's our pleasure today to be hearing from Walker Zhang. Walker Zhang will be giving the presentation today.
Thank you, Jonathan. My name is Walker Zhang. I'm the Executive Director of WETIA, or the World Evangelical Theological Institute Association. My organization, we primarily work with theological institutions in the majority world. We help them adapt the use of technology in order to fulfill their mission. And so we work with schools all around the world. And I think one of the things that we do, and this is a conversation I had with Jonathan a few months ago, is we study the latest in technology trends. And we do this so that theological institutions can keep up to date. And the conversation I had with Jonathan was on, the social media influencer economy and just how much this has developed. And as we began speaking about this, we thought about, how can this apply to theological education? And so that's basically the topic today. I'm going to be talking about the influencer economy, kind of giving you a broad overview of it, and speaking about application in theological education. So today's presentation is entitled The Social Media Influence Economy and Theological Education. And I've already done my introduction. And these are the four things we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about how influencers actually become influencers and the strategic path to that. We're going to be also talking about the overall economy. How do they monetize their influencer base? How do they monetize their subscribers and fans? Then I'm going to be going just briefly through some reflections I've had on how this can be used in theological education. And when I say theological education, I'm speaking more than just about, seminaries and institutions overall, but more talking about how we can use social media and the influence economy both to get theological education in general, the information, the theology out to this internet generation, and also how we can monetize it in order to make it more sustainable. So that's what I mean when I speak about theological education. And finally, I do also hope to have a discussion about how we can and get all of you and the panel here the input on how we can use it in theological education overall. Your thoughts on that, some of the good points, and also some of the things we should watch out for. And so, these are the four things I'm going to be talking about today. So, the strategic path to the influencer. So, to become an influencer, you obviously need to be influential. And you need subscribers, you need viewers, and you need followers. So to do this, there's actually people who study this, how you can actually get these subscribers and viewers more and more. And what better way, first of all, of course, is to become viral. So how is viral content made? I think that's the first thing. A lot of people, they kind of think that viral content is just luck. Here's a popular video. You guys have probably seen this before. This is a parent who captured their child sort of after the dentist, and the child just sort of making, just funny comments after the dentist here. And this, video went viral a number of years ago, 138 million views, as you can see in the screenshot. So a lot of people kind of think that this is just a luck thing. You just happen to capture the right moment, you post it, and then it just, suddenly goes viral. But, the more and more you actually look at it, there are people out there that consistently go viral over and over and over again. I'm not just talking about the random parent doing their child, but actual just people who do this for a living, and they just keep going viral and over again. Here's another viral video. This one has 45 million views. And what you kind of begin to see about this viral creator, his name is Bill Wirtz, is that it's not just this video with 46 million views here, but he's got a number of other videos. He's got, you can see at the bottom there, he's got 3.1 million subscribers right here. How do they do it? How do they keep going viral over and over again? If you look at his video and you look at the similar attributes that other viral videos have, what you begin to see is that these content creators have gotten better and better at studying the traits of virality. They in order to get more clicks. In this case, in Bill Wirtz's case, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this later, these kind of attributes. What he's really doing is he's making information really funny. He's telling a story and he's telling a story, giving information about the history of Japan, making it really funny. And this is actually a type of viral strategy. So I'm going to explain that a little bit more. So, when you look at viral videos and you begin to study them, you begin to understand that viral videos all have similar attributes to them. The one similarity that I think all viral videos have is that they provoke an emotion. They provoke an emotional response from their viewers. Anyone who wants to strategically create the viral video is going to ask that question when they first make that video. What do I want my audience to feel? Of course, the audience has got to feel something, whether it be funny or sad or just inspired. They've got to feel something. They've got to feel some type of emotion in order for it to become viral. And that's one attribute that all viral videos have. Also, most viral videos have one of three attributes inside of them. If you look, number one is one type of viral video is that they'll challenge some type of assumption. What they'll do is they'll shock viewers into thinking what they've understood, how they've understood something. They've understood it in a wrong way. And so what happens is when a person feels challenged and they've seen a short video clip or, and they feel like they've been challenged and they're seeing something new, they want to share that with their friends because they want their friends to be surprised. And so because they've been challenged, they want their friends to be surprised. They'll share that and the friends will share that. And this is kind of how it just keeps going viral. Another attribute that viral videos have is that they have a unique perspective. This is another type of video that it'll explain a perspective, explain something in a way that isn't, completely obvious or cliche, something that you've already seen before. They'll explain a perspective in a new type of way. The last way in which viral videos go viral is that they'll tell a story. They'll tell an underdog story, a twist at the end, a tragedy, a comedy, a rags to riches, this kind of story. As long as it tells a story, people like it, they'll become inspired, they want to share it. And so, when you look at it, viral videos are strategic. When I say strategic, these things I'm talking about in terms of provoking emotion, challenging assumption, all these things, these are things that I'm just telling you. This is stuff that people actually study. These are articles that have been written. I've taken a few courses here and there on social media, and these are things that people actually talk about, characteristics of what viral videos have. And so these are some common attributes viral videos have. Not only do they have attributes, but people actually strategically make a video in a certain way. So one way in which they make a video is they do something called a remix strategy. So, of course, if you're making people who go viral are usually some type of innovator. They're doing something first, for the first time ever. That's why, no one's ever seen it before. That's why they're going viral. And so, you know, when you look at other people as they make videos, just regular people making videos, what people will often do is they'll copy that same exact thing. So they'll see a viral video and they'll copy other people who did that viral, but they'll just copy that kind of format. So you'll see a lot of YouTube videos, for example, follow that format that they did before. You know, even that first video where you have the parent filming their child. How many videos do you see of that? You know, people do this all the time in order to, people do this all the time, copying that. And so, you know, in actuality, what, you know, to make innovation, it's not that you're trying to, you know, make something completely from scratch, but, you know, what people often do is they remix other content in order to make something new. They combine other types of work. They try to combine it in ways that have never been done before. Here in this video screenshot that I have for you, this person, he's got, you know, 3.7 million views, so fairly viral. He combined, you know, a popular, you know, video cooking. You know, this is a popular thing. You know, it's nothing new. You know, maybe the first cooking video out there was popular, but this is something that a lot of other people copy. But what he did was he tried to add a twist to it. So he added comedy into a cooking video, and if you look at the video, you know, I'm not going to click on it for you, but if you look at the video, he's trying to add his comedy into the cooking video. And so he's doing it kind of in that way. And so, you know, basically, you know, when we talk about the strategy of remixing, what you're doing is you're taking, you know, popular things, you're remixing with other popular things, putting it together, and you're making something new. And this is kind of what people do in order to, the remix strategy, in order to make viral videos. Another strategy that people use is that they use an information entertainment strategy. So, you know, information, educational things, these are things that you know, are things that, you know, information that's already out there, you know, content that teaches you something. But in the information entertainment strategy, what you're doing is you're essentially making content, you're making information extremely entertaining. So you're mixing, you know, basic information with eliciting emotion, you know, that first viral attribute that we saw there. So you're mixing information with eliciting an emotion. In this video, what this video is doing is it's giving life advice, so nothing new. If you were to just go on a video right now and give life advice, you know, you'd probably only get a few hundred views, you know, or, you know, whoever's following you might view it also. But, you know, this video got 1.5 million views, and it's because they did it in a unique way, in a unique, entertaining way. You know, what they did was they had this 5-year-old give advice to a 2-year-old. And then in the next, you know, if you go a few seconds down the line, they had a 9-year-old give advice to this 5-year-old. And then they had the 13-year-old give advice to a 9-year-old. And they just kept repeating this pattern over and over again, all the way up to old age. And so just kind of a unique way to give life advice. And because it was unique, I mean, it's nothing new information, just life advice. But because they did it in a unique way, it elicited emotion, and it was just sort of innovative, and it went somewhat viral at 1.5 million views. So, you know, when you look, there are strategies in order to go viral like that. You know, going viral is, you know, there's a way in which you can do it. We call this growth hacking. So it's that people, they don't just, you know, upload and hope. You know, you know, now that they've made this nice video that elicits an emotion, that challenges assumptions, or do whatever they do, they don't just upload this video and hope, but they also try to growth hack this video. A lot of people just kind of think that way, that if you just upload something and, you know, it looks nice, that a lot of people will just look at it. But it's not what people do, not what strategic people do, I should say. What they do first is that they try to target small niche groups to quickly, you know, post upon upload, so that they can get, you know, they can get a few views, you know, quickly. So they, you know, wherever their video goes to, let's say it's like a cooking video or something like that, they go into cooking forums or cooking blogs. They go into these blogs, Facebook groups, Reddit, and other forums, and they work in those type of networks in order to share them. If it gets popular in these groups, what they try to do is they use these smaller groups to gain credibility with the bigger sites. So, if your video has been posted in a somewhat, small or medium popular blog, then you can take the link from that blog, and then you can start to think about how can I mass email that YouTube video or this content into a bigger site. So of course, news organizations, you'll see this all the time. News organizations these days are, they post articles on popular videos. Or they just straight up go to popular Instagram or Twitter users, celebrities out there. And what they do is they use these smaller sites as reference. Because if you were to do that just by yourself, if you were to just take some type of video that you just uploaded by yourself and you were to email that link just to a popular news organization or Instagram user, they probably wouldn't pay you any attention. But if you take it from a smaller, medium-sized blog that's somewhat popular, then they might take you a little bit more seriously. And the key is if you mass email all these bigger sites, one post in the right website can change everything. I think that's sort of the theory behind this. That's what people hope for. I mean, really, you see this all the time. One post in the right place, makes things go viral. So when you look at all of these, when you look at these, these attributes that people study, these strategies that people use in order to make these sites, and the growth hacking, involved in this, you can begin to understand that, viral videos, popular videos are strategic. Channels who quickly want to become popular use these strategies. To become an influencer isn't just something you just pray and hope for, but it's something that people work at and do one by one, and their strategies in order to do this. And I've only kind of touched the surface here, and these are just a few things that people do in order to do this. So we've looked at how influencers become influencers, how they become strategic. So now that you've become an influencer, now that you've grown enough to become an influencer, the question is how do you monetize it, right? How do you start to make money off becoming a social media influencer? So a lot of people, they kind of think that it's just done simply by ad revenue. So this is a sort of a screenshot of YouTube ad revenue. And most people think like this, and a lot of people do make a living off of this, because it's a very easy thing to do. All you've got to do is hit a button on YouTube to say, I want to be a partner with YouTube, and they'll begin putting ads on your videos. And you've probably seen those ads before. And depending on how many views you get, the earnings range. YouTube has its own algorithms in terms of who's watching the video, what age ranges, and what countries are viewing this. And depending on that, they give you money based on that. So that's why there's kind of a range here. And most of the time, I'll say that the range is probably more on the lower end. I think this is a very high range. I think this is a very high estimate. So you should be looking really at the low end of the earnings here. And it's a very easy thing to do, but the problem is that YouTube ad revenue is not really worth it. I mean, let's say you're working hard to make this ad revenue. You've really got to have a lot of subscribers in order to make a living. Because I mean, if you're just getting views in the 1,000 to 10,000 range, and that's how all YouTube stars sort of start out. I mean, they've got to get they've got to start with 1,000 views or 10,000 views. You're making very little. I mean, $2, $20, what's that? I mean, it's really when you start getting to like a million subscribers, when you start making 2,000, per video, then you can start thinking about, making actually just a personal living. And making 1 million subscribers is very difficult to do. Sometimes it takes years for people to get to 1 million subscribers. And so, it's very, very hard work. It's not really all that much money, when it comes down to it. YouTube revenue is not all that much money. Another problem with YouTube ad revenue is that, there's no control over it. YouTube's always changing their algorithm. There was a something called adpocalypse that happened a few years ago, where they changed their algorithms, and then people lost like half their views and half their ad revenue. And so YouTube can just do whatever they want, change algorithms. You can lose your viewers, you can lose advertisers, and your earnings suddenly shift. And so YouTube ad revenue really isn't something to rely on. And so really, how can you monetize if you're an influencer? How do these people, make money for a living? So when you study this, what YouTube influencers are doing, they're not making money off their common fans. What social media influencers doing is they want to make money off their super fans. And so, even if you've got, 10,000 subscribers, so if you've got 10,000 subscribers, you're looking at, $20 per video. That's nothing. But, how do you make money if you've just got those 10,000 subscribers? So what the goal is they're looking for this, 2 to 3% of those 10,000 fans, about 200 to 300 super fans. The theory and the goal is, if you can get super fans, the people who really, really like you, out of those 10,000 subscribers that you have, if you can get those people who really, really like you, 200 to 300 of those 10,000 people, and they can spend, let's say, approximately about $20 a month on you, then that's about $4,000 to $6,000 a month, right? If you do the math. And then you can start to think about making a living off that 10,000 subscribers you have. And I think that's usually the first goal for these influencers, to get about 10,000 subscribers and take these 200 to 300 super fans. And therefore, even if you haven't gone like super viral, even if you aren't like a big, huge star that has, 1 million or 10 million subscribers, you can begin to think, even if I'm in a niche market, then I can begin to think about monetizing these 10,000 subscribers that I have, with just a few hundred of those super fans. And how can I monetize those super fans? Well, there's a few things out there in the influencer economy that have begun to develop. The first thing is private access. So influencers will give private access to their super fans. They'll create, like a forum here, or they'll create a private Facebook group, or they might just straight up, like we have a Zoom session going on here, or Skype, Google Hangout, or WhatsApp chat group. They'll develop these sort of private groups that they can interact privately with these super fans. And these super fans will usually pay about $10 to $20. That we talked about monetizing $10 to $20 for those 200 to 300 fans. They'll pay that $10 to $20 per month in order to get those special access. Example of this might be, let's say like a niche market, like an exercise guru, or a teacher who's teaching people how to play guitar. They'll want access specifically to that person to chat with them, to get advice on these type of things. And so they're trying to get really this premium content from these influencers, this extra content out there. And so, one thing that people do after they've sort of fleshed out how to develop this premium content is they start to make an actual information product, like a course. And so, that $10 to $20 per month, if they've made like a full course, then they can think about, how can I charge these super fans if they want like a full course out there, $1,000 for course. This is pretty common, actually. They develop a course for about $1,000, and to do it. And an example of this might be like a programmer, or a cooking class, or even an entrepreneur, someone who's trying to teach other people how to sort of make a startup. And so they'll make a full course on this, charge $1,000. And the good thing about a course is that, once you've made the course, they can just, they've already made it. So they're just making $1,000 each time someone buys this. And the more and more popular someone gets, the more and more, that $1,000 just keeps coming over and over again. So they'll take, premium content, make an information product, charge the $10 to $20 per month, raise it to $1,000 for a course. And, you know, once they start thinking about that, then they'll begin to expand that even more. They'll think about seminars or boot camps. So we're talking about in-person access to this person. So seminars and boot camps, of course, will be, you know, well more than $1,000 sometimes, depending on, you know, the field. They'll do that, or maybe they'll just do like an in-person event that they'll just kind of charge tickets for. They'll do like a tour around the world to different cities, and they'll have like a college tour to their fans in colleges and speak to them, and they'll just charge like $30 to $50 per ticket for these sort of in-person type of things. So they'll do this in-person type things, boot camps, intensive one-on-one sessions. And, you know, once again, these in terms of these in-person events, the draw is the personality here. And so, you know, they'll make the content that they are. They'll advertise their seminar or boot camp on their channel, and then they'll, you know, want to sell these tickets out there to the people and the draw is their personality. So the first three ways I kind of talked about is, you know, the draw to the personality itself. But it's not just the personality. When you look at it, they have an opportunity also to create merchandise. This is sort of the banner for Teespring. Teespring is a website that helps, you know, these social media influencers put, you know, their content on T-shirts and mugs and cell phone covers and the like. And so a lot of times these social media influencers, as they're making their, you know, content, they usually have these certain catchphrases that they have, and you know, they have these catchphrases that they have that resonate with their core fans, and they don't have to do anything. All they've got to do is sort of put their catchphrase, send it to Teespring, and Teespring will, you know, have a website ready to, and, you know, all the, you know, to accept credit card payment, the whole thing they'll do. And all they've got to do is advertise that merchandise on their channel or on their Instagram or on their Twitter saying this. And one thing that social media influencers like to do is they like to kind of put it in a frenzy. They sell certain types of merchandise for a limited time only. They sell them usually around, you know, $20 to $50. They'll try to sell like a few hundred, thousand, and they'll only say that, you know, this is available for a few weeks or a month. And if they're selling, you know, T-shirts and sweaters for $10 to $50, they're usually making around $10 to $30, you know, per T-shirt or sweater that they're selling. And so, you know, this is a big draw. There are some, I've even seen some social media influencers out there that they don't even do any of the other stuff, all that private access. They don't want to spend their time on all this stuff. They make all their money on merchandise. I mean, they're able to make their living just on this. So besides merchandising, of course, what you probably already know is that there's brand deals out there. They try to make integrated advertisements into their videos, or they just put they put a photo of their brand, and they put that on Instagram. And the benefits of brand deals is that, you know, once you get a brand deal, the brand will help promote you also. You know, the brand will put your promotion on also their Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is. And these brand deals can be pretty lucrative. I mean, you're talking just even for the beginning brand deals can start even in the low thousands for a spot, and the really popular ones, the celebrities, are making hundreds of thousands, you know, per spot. And these are becoming more common. You know, in the past, you know, when YouTube was first out there, you know, if someone sort of put an advertisement or was making a brand deal, you know, the fans might think of them as sellouts, you know, that before they were making free content, now they're putting these advertisements. But now, you know, now fans sort of understand. They understand that the person that they like needs to make a living in order to make the content of what they're doing to make that sustainable. And so, you know, that's why these fans, another way that they monetize is that they just straight up give donations. Patreon is a very common one. YouTube has a button now on YouTube that for some of these influencers that just say join. So Usually this ranges from, you can just be donating $1 a month, but usually a lot of fans are donating just straight up $5 to $10 a month. They do this because they like the personality, they like the social media influencer, and they feel like they feel inspired to donate to that influencers. And so, Patreon helps, or YouTube Join, or TubeStart sort of helps make it easy to donate to their monthly to their favorite stars. And another way they can get donations too is just through the old-fashioned, it's old now, I mean, it's been around for 10 years, Kickstarter or GoFundMe. So they do this, especially if they're making they do this if they're making some kind of new project out there. They say, I'll put your name on the video at the very end on credits if you donate to my Kickstarter or GoFundMe project. And or even if they're doing one of the first that full-on course that we talked about earlier, they'll kickstart that course. So the people who kickstart it at a certain level, they won't have to pay for that course or get a discount off that course once it's made. And so, donations is a pretty common thing as well these days. And the last monetization method I kind of want to talk about that's really making a lot, I'm not sure how this might apply to all of us, but I think it deserves mention, is live stream donations. So this is kind of how gamers make money. So you can kind of see a screenshot here. Here's a gamer, playing some kind of first-person shooter here. He's playing this first-person shooter, and then this guy, this user has donated $1 to him, and you can kind of see at the bottom here, he's, he puts some comment inside of it. So he's live streaming his gaming, and then once this person makes a donation, $1, then in the live stream itself, this is using Twitch, it says, good job for keeping this stream clean, keep it going. I mean, it actually says that. So you can say anything you want. You can say, go Bruins, or something like that. You can, your favorite, college team or whatever. You can say anything you want, and it just sort of puts it out there. And so, fans basically click and donate in order to sort of participate in the live stream. This is really popular. I mean, Twitch is no joke. I mean, Ninja, probably the richest social media influencer out there and gamer. This person's pulling in probably $100,000 per month alone just on Twitch. But Twitch isn't just for gamers. They're out there. There are people that are sleeping. They're sleeping. They live stream how they're themselves sleeping. People donate. And while they're donating, of course, the message comes out, and so it wakes them up as they're going to sleep. And so this is sort of an entertaining thing out there. So people sleep and get donations out of this. People vlog their life. They'll just go about their daily life, live stream their daily life, and as they're live streaming, their fans will just donate $1, $10, $20. They'll just do it as they're going, and so. I thought this deserved mention to see how this might apply as well. I've mentioned a few monetization methods out there. There might be a few more that I haven't mentioned, but I think I've covered sort of the main ones that influencers used. I'd like to speak about theological education as well too. As we study this and as we look at social media influencers, how they become influencers and how they monetize this. How can we apply to getting theological education out there in terms of this network generation, this internet generation? I think the first thing we need to think about is the role of the professor, because when you talk about monetization strategies, the personality, when you look at the commonality between all of this, the personality is important. That's what these internet users are drawn to, is the personality. And so, when you start to think about professors, and I know I'm talking about theological education overall, but specifically also institutions themselves. And how should theological institutions think about professors? And Rather than focusing the brand of the institution on the institution itself, or even the ministry, rather than thinking about the brand based on the ministry itself, we might begin to think about the brand based on the professor itself, the personality. And I think if we begin to think about the role of the professor, we can begin to think about this sort of fundamental shift that's happening in the internet age, of this identity, of this brand on the individual rather than the institution or the ministry. And also want to think about what kind of free content we can put out there. I think that a lot of times institutions and ministries are thinking about how we can monetize just straight up, put this paywall on. But the internet is all about, free. So how can we, first of all, think about making free content, using the viral strategies previously mentioned to get popular, and then using those viral strategies, clickbaits and, attractive titles and those kind of things, making shorter and more personal content in order to become more and more popular, get views, and not thinking about putting a paywall on it first, but letting some of this content out there for free, thinking about how to become viral first, how to become popular first, free content first. So using that as the first thing in theological education. And then after you've built that free content, then you think about how I can monetize it. So building information products, premium content. I think if you're looking at it from a theological institution perspective, they've already got courses prepared. So they've already got an information product out there. But if you're not a theological institution, how you can make some, now that you've made the free content, how can I divide between free content and premium content? How can I make models of a paid subscription for special access to the personality, to the popular person how can I make a forum or a chatting group, to get special access to that person? How can I do merchandising or brand deals? Why not, integrate, ministries or Christian products or businesses that want to, work together with others in order to monetize it. I mean, I don't think we should limit, not, thinking theological education just has to be free. I mean, I think, these days, especially internet and network generation type people, they're thinking, this is something common, having advertisements, merchandising, and brand deals. Why not integrate this into, the kind of education in order to make it sustainable? People understand that it has to be sustainable. And then how can we think about the models of donations? I mean, we have the old-fashioned way in which we think about donations, but you've seen this new way in which donations are made, whether it be through, automated, just monthly, small donations on the internet through Patreon or one of these, or crowdfunding this, these new types of donation systems that we have, rather than the old institutional models of donations that we have about. One good example, I think, a person who's done this really, really well is Dave Ramsey. I'm not sure if you've heard of Dave Ramsey. He's a good example. What he's doing is he's providing Christian principled advice on finances, Christian principled financial advice. He does this to all people, not just Christians, but he does it from a Christian worldview. I think he's kind of like the pastor for, financial, the financial advice person. He's like the pastor for finances. I mean, if you look at Dave Ramsey and his network, I mean, this person's got a popular radio show that he's done for years and years, but he hasn't just left it at that as just a radio show that he's done. He's expanded it out into a podcast, into a YouTube channel. If you look at his YouTube channel, it's all this like a clickbait, type things. I mean, he's really good at drawing people in. He's got millions of views on topics like, how do I get out of $1 million worth of like student debt? He's got these kind of clickbait type type titles on there, and he just puts it on YouTube, his material on YouTube. And then, of course, because he's got a radio show, he was naturally inclined to do this. He's got merchandising and brand deals throughout his podcast and his radio show. And then he turned that into a financial peace university. He turned his Christian principled financial advice into an actual educational content type thing. He calls it Financial Peace universities. So if you don't know Dave Ramsey, study him because he really knows how to monetize, information, and he does it from a Christian perspective. Why can't theological education learn from these type of people? I think I'm kind of closing up on the presentation portion of this, and as we look at this how influencers become influencers, how they monetize, these topics that we can think about in theological education. I kind of want to open it up to all of you now.
First of all, we want to thank you, Walker. You've given us an incredible presentation, and maybe one or two of us here in the room have been thinking with you along these things. Clyde, I know, has. Jay has. The rest of us, this is kind of new. And so we're hugely grateful for the research and the careful thinking that you've done, presented a ton of new ideas to us. Applauding does not work well on Zoom, but we're going to applaud you anyway. Walker, thank you so much what you've been doing for us. And then I think probably there was a busy chat, but rather than formally redressing those issues, let's just let people surface those things that have come up most prominently. What are our questions for Walker?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a good thing. Well, let's open it up to questions, and then we'll kind of get into the discussion. After that, I think that'd be a good way to do things. So,
anybody go ahead with good questions?
Well, I was curious. I liked Jay's question. He wrote, people go viral, but would you also say we are seeing AI bots as content generators?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably referring to a lot of, especially like the fake news or that's out there, but others are doing that. I mean, yeah, this is a common thing that people do. I don't know how applicable that is to a social media influencers. I mean, if you're just a typical influencer, you don't have the technology capability in order to do this. Now, you might pay a company in order to do this for you, but I'm not sure how much a regular social media influencer has the technological capability in order to do this. They're just they have an interest in something, and they're just kind of putting it out there.
Walker, I want to speak to that point that, there are those AI bots, and I know several travel-based social media influencers that use those. They use them to spark questions and discussions among their Facebook messenger. So they'll send a Facebook question, and that's the AI bot that's generating that. Like, what's preventing you from traveling all the time? And they'll put several different options: time, money, and they'll give options. I can see the engagement with that, but as far as it impacting global theology, yeah, I think there's some potential in it. If you were to throw out a certain question to the subscriber base, it could engage in a pretty interesting dialogue, thus engaging content, getting people to subscribe to your channel.
That's very interesting. Yeah, that's a very good point. I'll have to think about that more. Yeah.
And I'll just chime in. So I did put a link in there to this interview that was Digital Brand Architects it was 30 minutes, really insightful. Disclaimer, it's our daughter who's being interviewed. So she's a social media influencer. And so she's got, between her YouTube and her Facebook or her Twitter, Instagram, over 400K subscribers. And she's making a lot of money. She's doing very well. But I didn't realize that was AI, because she's always on her Instagram story doing these little like Q&A kind of a things. I guess I didn't realize that was AI. She uses it all the time. So that's really interesting to kind of ask what her content base, what kind of content they're looking for, any kind. Very interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah, I think you guys bringing out AI, that's probably something I should study more, maybe incorporate into this presentation. I have not yet studied these AI. I'm assuming these influencers don't have the technological capability to do this. They're probably paying other companies in order to do this, I imagine. And so that's something we should definitely look into and study a little bit more.
And I'm not an expert, but there are two primary companies that do kind of do the AI for you. There's WeChat, and I forget the other one, but in any event, there's obviously vendors out there who will do that for you.
Yeah,
it's probably MiniChat.
Is that what I got it wrong? It was MiniChat. Sorry, WeChat's totally different. Sorry, wrong. Thank you.
Walker, how do you delineate between social influencer and social media content provider? Because a lot of what you discussed really kind of falls into the content creator, content provider, rather than the influencer. Like in the social media world, influencers really seen as fans that you basically turn into your advocates out there. They are your influencers. They are not their own influencer. They're somebody else's influencer for you. So you see, whenever you see people using things, we do this here at Lifeway with blog groups and blog, for books. So we have a list of influencers who we send stuff and they talk about our stuff. But the way you're talking about influencer, it seems like you're talking more about the content provider, like what my boss, Tom Rayner, did with his content with Church Answers, CCU, Church Consultation University, Interim Pastor University, a lot of the other things that he's done. So how do you delineate between those two, or are you kind of using those terms interchangeably?
Yeah, you're right, Jonathan. I don't think I have necessarily delineated between the two. When I mean influencer, I'm basically talking about the personality, the person itself, and people wanting to be fans of them, hearing what they have to say. So the influencer themselves. And I think a lot of times, in order to become an influencer, you're essentially, and I'm not talking about the celebrity type influencer either. So, the people who are just like a person for being a person. I'm really talking about the influencer that is perhaps somewhat of an expert in his field. It could be an exercise person, or it could be real estate, or it could be business. It could be cooking or whatnot. It could be these types of people that are not only influencers, but they're somewhat knowledgeable and experts sort of in their field. I think that's so I think I am blending the content and the influencer kind of together. Not just a celebrity, but the celebrity that is giving information and teaching something.
Some of you have done a lot more thinking about this than I have. Obviously, from my generation, you're fortunate to be able to see me on Zoom. And this is a miracle, sort of like crossing the Red Sea. I do teach on Zoom. I have classes that I conduct on Zoom. But working with social media influencers is a different category for me. I'm wondering in this, when we're talking about this as it relates to theological education, I can certainly see how this would help your fundraising. I mean, that's very measurable and very doable. I'm having a hard time seeing how you get your viewers to actually roll over and become better students of Scripture. If some of you have done some thinking on that, I'd really like to hear it, and I'm going to shut up.
Go ahead, Jay, and then I'll chime in.
Yeah, Walker and Michael. I think we're at the point where social media, we have to look at it in terms of the upside and downside, right? The upside is the democratization of theology, or theology from the bottom up. The downside is fragmentation, and because social media, it used to be geography that united us and gave us our identity. Then it was culture, and faith. Now it's media, and it's all kinds of agendas. The question about AI bots was others use agendas and use our narrative to subvert the gospel, and that it's not. It could be the donkey's agenda, it could be the elephant's agenda, it could be the Kremlin's agenda. But bots and social media can go in all ways. The question is, how do we do, we all want to be doing great theology, but how do we raise up social influencers and give incentives to our faculty and to our adjuncts to really create the conversations that are inclusive, or otherwise we're going to continue to live in a world of walls, and walls are going to go up, and authoritarianism and subversion, and yes, fake news, right? Or in the sense of the unreality world. And so how do we bring this back to the issues of justice, the issues of every person sitting on their own vine tree as a social media influencer, but yet walking humbly with our God and loving mercy and doing justice and sharing. This is an extraordinary age we've come into. So with that, I think, I'm in an institution like many of you institution, and I was actually in an institution founded by Oral Roberts, one of the great popularizers of healing, and then second, broadcast media, TV, and then of course faith promise or seed promise giving. All that, he used technology to go viral, really. The issues is, how do we use technology, and how do we do talent innovation to where we're seeking God and serving others in a maximum way. So with that, structurally, I'm in an institution, Walker and Michael and others, but we understand the student life cycle. That's our SIS, Student Information System. We understand the educational cycle. That's our LMS, but we don't understand social media engagement. And we don't have a social engagement, a member engagement system that's lifelong. And so we're structured on courses. So how are we going to see this transition? Who are the early adopters in types of the systems? Do we use Mighty Networks? Do we use association management software? How do we get the bridge to get the transformation we need in a live context with people, other than just getting their attention and turning them into further victimizing them a part of a tribe? So I threw a lot out on the table, but I think the question is, how do we do theology and then transform our institutions, and what type of people do we need, talent we need to innovate with to do that?
Let's look at some practical applications here. Let's think of things in modern culture today that really engage people, because Walker, back me up on this. As somebody is scrolling through a Facebook feed and they see a video, the average view length is 7 seconds. If you don't have a viewer after 7 seconds, they're going to scroll on down. If you don't hook them and bring them in. But if you think of I'm going to use a really loose association here. Has everybody watched the show Adam Ruins Everything? Has everybody ever seen that show? Okay. It may not be necessarily along our moral guidelines, but what you can look at and go, what they do, it's an editing style, but it's also done with humor, and it's very engaging at the same time, providing educational material on history. It's usually very fast paced. It's not necessarily loaded with information, but the editing style, is combined with a little bit of humor, a little bit of animation, sometimes computer work, but it's very engaging, and you learn things about certain issues within history. I think one of them had to do with how much garbage is on Mount Everest, but the entire process was done very fast, but you watch it and it hits and it's instantly going. And in today's modern youth, I engage with guys at that particular generation, and my side project is that they want it fast, they want it efficient. We keep our videos 3 minutes or less. And, if you're looking to engage with that generation, Jay, if a young person today, say between the ages of, 18 and 22, was sitting down watching what we're doing right now, boom, they'd be scrolling past. We would be boring. They wouldn't want to even listen to us. But if it was done fast-paced, engaging, it starts with a question. So all of a sudden in their mind, they're going, oh, yeah, I've always wanted to know the answer to that. And then boom, 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 boom. The information flies at them so fast that they may not pick it all up, but they'll go back and engage with it later on. They'll save it to their favorites. They'll share it on their Facebook. Those are the type of things that keep things going. It has to be big. It doesn't have to be flashy, but it has to be entertaining enough that it pulls them, it suckers them in and go, okay. And Walker, I love that you used the Twitch feed. I've got a couple boys at my house. They love the Fortnite. They love the Minecraft and all that stuff, but it's that engagement at that level, because they're even starting their own Twitch feeds of playing their gaming, and people log on. It happens organically. And so, Jay, as you're looking to engage with students and saying, how do we get that theology piece out there? Maybe it starts with the question, but then it's presented, in such a way that it starts and stops. And watch some of those different presentations that are out there. Like I said, if you watch Adam Ruins Everything, it may not be the moral format we're looking for, but it's the editing style and the presentation style that we should look to replicate, only based around our faith.
Yeah, Jay, just to respond to your thing, I think you made two different points there. I think in terms of the shortness of the video, I think that's a very important point in terms of length, that the attention span is short. But I think also that, kind of going back to, what I was saying earlier in terms of attributes of a viral video, when you talk about asking a question at first, that's what, you know, these are the attributes that people talk about in terms of challenging an assumption or giving a unique perspective. You know, these are the things that are doing it. And I think what you're speaking about is that in theological education, we need to be more strategic about the content that we're putting it out there. We need to, you know, we need to be shorter. We need to be sweeter. We need to, you know, use strategies like asking a question at first. I mean, that's definitely one way to do it. You know, a few seconds, it would be definitely on a Facebook or Instagram feed. I think on YouTube, you know, you might be looking at a few minutes, you know, 5 minutes even. I think people might be even willing to look at. But nonetheless, I think, you know, using these types of strategies, not just, you know, filming and randomly putting out there, but I think in theological education, we need to strategize how we put the content out there. I think that's what you're trying to say. And the other thing I think you're thinking about in terms of just the draw of the personality. Yeah, I think that was just another main point I think I tried to make out throughout the presentation, the twitch and just the engagement. I mean, once we, you know, people, they want engagement. It kind of goes back to Michael's first point right there when he was talking about how, you know, you can see how we monetize it, but how can we become, you know, maybe I think he was trying to put out the spiritual formation. How can they become deeper in theological education and theological reflection? You know, I think some of these tools are able to do that. If we continue to think about how they can be used, like, you know, like this live stream, how we can ask questions, how we can have deeper discussions. I think you begin to get into the realm of spiritual formation and theological reflection there. So, yeah.
I was also curious about assessment. In other words, is this may be at the moment, it seems to me more of like a non-formal approach to education, theological education, which is acceptable. There's non-formal, there's informal, and of course then there's formal schooling. But has any thinking been done about how to do assessment other than getting viewers? In other words, if we're trying to teach something or even change values and attitudes, which I think is really the heart of Christian education, if we do it correctly, how do we assess that successfully so that we realize we're actually getting the movement that we want in those that are engaged with us in this, you know, innovative style?
I think you're asking a very, very important question there, Michael. I mean, I think you're talking about sort of the, you know, how we can put them together. You know, we're talking about the theological institution on one end, and we're talking about this social media and short videos and short clips and just this type of live engagement, how we can kind of blend them together. Assessment, it would definitely be part of that. You know, when you speak about, I think there's, you know, just a quick response. I do think that there's, there are data analytic tools integrated into, you know, social media that can definitely help. It definitely helps into a database assessment. You know, when you talk about an institution doing its own self-study and assessment and taking that data, getting results out of that data, measuring that and improving for the future. I think that there are, you know, we can look from social media, because social media, a lot of it is data driven. So I think there are tools out there that we can use. But I think you are bringing a good question. I mean, do we, you know, are we just talking about theological education and just putting it out there? Or are we talking, I mean, you know, we're talking about you know, perhaps even a fundamental shift in how we think about the institution in theological education. You know, the degree, you know, what is, you know, how can we matriculate something through a degree if this is, you know, this is how we want to do it, the formal education versus informal education.
I think you're right on target. I think that maybe the way to think about it, because we're not going to abandon the institutions. They are self-perpetuating. You know, some of them have been funded from generations past and are, you know, they'll be there standing with the brick and mortar forever. But as with online education, maybe it becomes an add-on. We had to move to online education, and I pioneered that at DTS. So I'm aware that institutions have to move. They cannot remain the same. But maybe what we're talking about is our institutions taking on more of an informal theological education as an add-on to what they're doing with their formal education, because at some point we need scholars who, and these professors, as you pointed out, with the right kind of personalities that can attract viewers. Well, you know, we might get some lovely personalities that are brainless. They've not had any training. And so their information is useless. So we need this combination, it seems to me. But I'm intrigued by the possibility of challenging institutions with what you're talking about, a real presence in this area to attract non-formal, informal approaches to theological education, and perhaps out of that recruit students, you know, who want to become regular. They want really an in-depth approach. And so anyway, that's kind of the gist of my thinking as I'm responding to your wonderful presentation. So very helpful, Walter. I'm very grateful for it.
I think you're asking the question that I want to open it up to everyone else to you know, what can theological institutions do to adopt some of these strategies? Recruitment for theological education essentially is monetization. So I think you brought up a good point about recruitment, but I do want to open it up to others. I am curious what you know, others think about how theological institutions can adopt this, and can these old traditional models that have been around for generations with their endowments and whatnot, can they adapt, you know, to this, and how can they do it?
Can I actually ask you for one further reflection, Walker, as
Sure.
we transition exactly to that? How do these techniques apply? You've done us a gigantic service. For many of us, the social media influencer economy looks like some gigantic jungle and completely unnavigable. You've given you've shown us that there are real strategies that can be employed to make sense of that world, and that's a gigantic service. Some of the things that you talked about, which generate success in this jungle-like atmosphere, I jotted some of the things down. It's comedy, it's innovation, it's entertainment quality, it's emotional power or grab, it's super fans, people who really like you, and it's popularity driven. It's driven by a personality. Walker, you are, not only do you work with educational institutions through WETIA, through the World Evangelical Alliance, through the Association of Biblical Higher Education, but you're also a pastor
Sure.
in San Francisco.
Yes.
So let's start there, actually, because if theological educational institutions are meant to serve the church, let's get one quick reflection on the church. So as a pastor, what of these techniques are immediately applicable to your church? And maybe we'll build out from that.
Well, I think in terms of the church, I mean, I think the church's primary focus is on evangelism and to a certain extent discipleship as well too. So you know, I think some of these strategies have applicability to evangelism as well too. I haven't really fleshed that out as much. I mean, as a church pastor, it's a small church. You know, I haven't worked, you know, compared to the bigger institutions I've worked with that are out there. You know, I haven't really fleshed out how social media, you know, the influencer economy can work in the church, as you know, since I'm not in a big church as compared to an institution, larger institutions, which I have worked with. But I do think it has some applicability, and an evangelist should definitely think about this as well too. It's a good question.
That's a great point. In our work in churches, of course, we're shepherding souls. Souls will change amazingly little in 10 or 20 years, but technology will change unimaginably in those years. So how do we create a strategy that reaches people where they really are? Let's throw out Walker's great question to everybody. So what's the low-hanging fruit for educational institutions? How can we start applying these things?
If I can jump in on this one, I've seen it in my denomination, the Southern Baptist world, heavily from two specific institutions, one of them being Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary up in Kansas City. Whenever the new president came in, I think 4 or 5 years ago, with Jason Allen, He came in, he hired one of his big first hires was a content development person. We have talked about Midwestern to 120,000 people a month, every month for the last 3 years on this podcast that we do. So they have gotten students by the droves because they keep hearing about what people have to, or what they have to, people keep hearing about what they have to offer, plus their content platforms, and they're using personalities from the faculty to create platforms, to create content. So they have jumped full into the internet as a content platform for their people on their campuses. Now over at Southeastern Seminary in Wake Forest, they've used, I talk about the informal and the non-formal education. I'm not quite sure, being not in the theological world, I don't quite understand what the difference in those two are. So maybe somebody can help me with that. But they've jumped into certificate programs that are either low cost or free, and using those to bring in students, bring in prospective students who may not be considering wanting to go to seminary full time, or may want some kind of theological training, maybe not the formal theological training that they offer at the seminary, and even through their online classes, but doing these certificate programs. And that's allowed them, at the end of the day, they're using this just like Midwestern's using what they're doing and trying to build email lists, because that gets you prospects, that gets you alumni involved, that gets you recruitment, fundraising. The email list is still, at the end of the day, even everything that we do with Dr. Rayner and at Lifeway, it's email list driven. We want your email because we want to be able to converse with you on a one-on-one basis whenever we can. And that's where the low-hanging fruit is for seminaries and for theological education, is email. And if you ask your alumni guy, what's your email list, that he knows that's his most important thing. That's in his mailing list. And the email is, a lot cheaper for him to send an email than it is to send out a mass mailing of 50,000 people. So it may not have the same desired effects, and, depending on your clientele or your alumni base and the age of them, but at the same time, that's going to help you. And then as we move forward, I think we're going to see more and more seminaries, more and more theological institutions, divinity schools, whatever. You're going to be hiring people. In the past, you hired them because of what they'd published and the research they've done. You're going to be hiring people because of their platforms and the number of students they're going to bring. That's where it's going to change for theological education, is going to be in the hiring, because you're going to look at a professor that has no online presence, no following, and doesn't really bring in the potential to bring in students, versus somebody who's, celebrity status. And I'm not saying you hire because of the celebrity status, but they need to be able to have the theological chops to be able to provide, produce in the classroom. But they're going to bring in students. You're going to hire that guy. You're not going to hire the guy that doesn't have an online platform. So as we move forward, it's going to become more, it's just like publishing books. I work for a book publisher. If I have a possibility of an author that has really good content and has a strong online following, versus an author that has really good content and no online following, guess who's getting the book contract, guys? It's the one with the online following. So as you're bringing in, and your people or students at your divinity schools or seminaries, whatever it may be, they need to understand that if they want to have a long-term, because those jobs don't come open very often, you got to be able to bring more to the table than just, hey, I wrote a great dissertation, or I've got 4 or 5 years of experience. I've also got this, and I can bring students. So, and I'll let y'all follow up on that. And somebody please explain to me the difference between informal and non-formal education.
Jonathan makes a huge point there with the certificate program, because if you were to bring a student in, give them a certificate program, and then you get Clyde's daughter, who's got 400,000 subscribers, to talk about that on her Instagram page or her Facebook post or her Instagram TV post, all of a sudden she's endorsing Jonathan's certificate program, and everybody out there is hearing about it on a mass level.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I've got a online degree that I got from Criswell, and they did just that. They gave me basically full tuition to go through and do a master's in theological studies online, and kind of audit it for them at the same time, but also to be a brand ambassador for them to get students. So that's, we're heading down that way. We're seeing it with, you talked about with brands and how they're using social influencers. You can do the same thing as your school. You can get people to come and to do online education. It doesn't really cost you anything for an online student as a seminary. There's minimal cost, but that's something that's scalable. and the unit cost per se is very, very low compared to like an on-campus type classroom.
Let me help with the terms I used, Jonathan. I'm sorry. Informal education would be the kind of thing that you would do as a pastor or youth minister or even a professor in a hallway. Someone is engaging you with a significant question, and you are answering that question for them. That's, in my judgment, just as important as your lecture. In fact, I used to tell people that I did probably more educating in the hallway than I did in the classroom, just because you're dealing with the exact question that is on that student's mind. They will remember that moved them forward some way in their thinking and their walk with the Lord. Non-formal education is the kind of education that you do in a Sunday school class. It is organized. You do have a registered teacher. You have a particular curriculum that you're trying to go through. There is not, unfortunately, any kind of assessment of the effects of what was done in that Sunday school classroom, but it is formal in the sense that it is, or non-formal in the sense that you've organized it in some way. Those of you who travel internationally and work in all kinds of seminars and things like that, that's non-formal education. And I know exactly what I'm going to try to do during that week that I'm with them, but there's no degree at the end. It's not a formal class that they're going to take and get credit for. So if that helps you, I think the categories help us work with various things that we're trying to do, because it's not all formal, and formal isn't bad, non-formal isn't bad, and informal isn't bad. It's just different.
All right. So I guess a decent example for seminary or higher education would be the kind of the certificate programs, but not quite maybe that, but maybe more of a webinar type base approach would be a non-formal, and then informal would be a Q&A with Professor Jones on the hypostatic union or something like that. That would be the informal, or, dealing with bullies in the church, something like that. That would be the informal example for institutional higher learning.
Just to jump in, I wouldn't necessarily know how to do anything from an institutional level. If you're not familiar, the Bible Project is just about a 4-year-old online organization. We kind of do what Walker talked about. Like, that's what we do. We've been doing it for the last 4 years. We have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. We have tens of thousands of donors around the world, and that's what we do. So we put out content, we put out theological videos. We have 145 videos that are all 5 to 10 minutes of length that put out that. We get about 185,000 views per day. This is what we've been, for the last 4 years, this is what we've been doing, is just putting out content for free and figuring out how to generate that audience to be able to do that. So it's 18, because of the analytics that we get, because of our platforms. We know their ages, we know how old they are, we know their demographics. I know they're 18 to 35-year-olds of males is 85% of our audience on most of our videos. We have generally in the top 10 podcasts. We've got about 125,000 downloads every Monday. And so this is what we do, is put out content that does this all the time. We don't necessarily, before this, we used to make explainer videos for the tech world. So we used to be in that we had a team of about 125 that we made like tech videos for like small, for, the 2 to 3 minute versions. We now have found, with the amount of production value that we put in, and we have a team of about 35 folks here in Portland. And we make about 5, we're working on at any given time, about 5 different videos at a time. And right now we're doing those in about 16 different languages. And so this is kind of what we do. But I would have no idea how to do it from an institutional level. We do it with no ads. We do it with no advertising. We don't do any marketing. It's all, if you found it, it's because somebody shared it with you. But it's the videos on on YouVersion and YouTube and some stuff like that. So I wouldn't have any idea how to do it from an institutional level. We just started it as a group of people who knew how to make short, shareable content, and have been doing that for the last, like I said, going on just a little over 4 years.
Have you done any of these monetization methods that I talked about in these, or are you thinking about it, or is your model just, we'll get a donation and we'll put this out for free?
So like we modeled it based off of this group called Crash Course and what they did. And so we watched how they got a big $1 million grant from YouTube and watched how quickly that money went away. And so we built our own. We don't use any of the monetization ones out there because they take too much of a percentage. So we built our own with our own developers. But right now, I think we would actually have a slightly larger, like we're larger than any of the groups on Patreon. So like for us, like we use our own because we built it because it's that big of a deal for us to make sure we don't lose. Every percentage really matters. So, yeah, we don't do any ads. We don't do any like, hey, if you buy this extra content, you get this for free. We don't do any of that. We just say, we started from the ground up saying, if you like this video and you want to see more, we'd love for you to subscribe. So we started seeing people from all around the world, from Singapore to Australia to everywhere, go, I love it and I want to see more of it. So ours is a nonprofit. Everything we do is for free. There's nothing you can buy. It's just all out there. You can download it. You can play it wherever. And so for us, like we have we grow by about 50,000 subscribers per month and about 10 to 15,000 emails per month by just giving it away for free and having people share it.
Your primary method is essentially the Patreon sort of donation type method that I talked about. I know you said you make your own type of Patreon platform, but you're essentially getting, are you getting small donations? Are you getting large donations? You're getting a mix of the two. Are you getting them monthly? Are you getting them yearly? Are you getting them one time? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, we focus on small monthly donations, and I'd probably say less than 5% of our funds would be considered large donations. And so we have our average donation is $19, but it drives a pretty big engine when you have a lot of them.
Thank you.
I'm interested in the idea of how we engage the church in sharing social media with their immediate audience, right? I think it's hard for any given pastor or leader to become a personality on the internet or to get huge reach. And when that happens, that's great. But a lot of my social media is people I know, right? People I'm connected with more directly. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to equip those people to use the networks they already have. So already you see churches sharing things from Bible Project and content like that. And I think that that's another interesting opportunity, is to say, how do we take our theological education resources and share them with people who can then share them with their much smaller networks. And sure, it's great when we get someone who's got 100,000 followers and can reach millions of people with their videos. But what about the person who's got 200 followers, but those people pay attention to their posts and listen to them? And can we equip them to be a channel for getting that education out so that we reach people where they are?
Thanks very much. Walker, again, this is just an incredible set of ideas you put together. What are your unanswered questions? Like, if you were to give this presentation in 2 years from now, what's the research agenda for you as you look forward?
First of all, I think a lot of good points have been brought out. I'm gonna have to watch this back in order to incorporate a lot of things, like recruitment and church engagement, various questions that have been brought up, non-formal, informal education, delineating that. I do want to incorporate that in. So I think those have been talked about, and I'm going to flesh that out a little bit more later, maybe in future presentations. But the one remaining one I kind of want to think about is the role of the professor as a personality, as a brand. I wonder if this is a good thing, and if there are pitfalls in this, if it can be non-biblical, the cult of a personality type thing. If there's pitfalls in this type of model. I'm curious to everyone's thought, or is this something that we should be going after and doing. I'm wondering what the pros and cons are in terms of shifting it to the personality of a professor or any type of influencer as a personal brand.
Let's dive into that. And if individual professors have substantial brands, what's ultimately going to be the glue that keeps them together in an institution?
Just interestingly, we from the very beginning didn't want to actually have personality driven behind our entire organization because of advice we got from the very beginning from a number of folks who had just seen their organizations tumble and fall when they based it around a particular individual, and then whatever decisions decisions they do or don't make as they go on in life, and so for us, the decision was really intentional to try to actually have faces and names not as prominent, and have it more about the brand and what the brand puts out rather than personalities. Because if you base it all upon that, from advice we got from the very beginning was just what can happen, especially from an institution level, when a decision gets made or an action happens, and then the fallout of that is just a lot larger than you might be able to. While the initial windfalls can be really fast and quick, the potential fallout can be pretty significant, actually even more significant. So from our decision, we actually had to, we wanted to go away from that idea of making it about a particular person or faces or names, and more around the idea of just the institution, just our 2 cents.
Hey, Gary, would you speak into this? This is your wheelhouse. Oral Roberts University is about the most, with yourself and Michael Matthews on staff, you're way out in the future. What's going on here?
We're trying to bend toward serving the next generation of spirit-empowered leaders. Yes, Mike Matthews, our Chief Innovation Officer with AI, augmented intelligence, or virtual reality, all that. I'm on the other end trying to bend our instruction to hybrid, blended. Only 17% of the U.S. would take an online course. So how do you bend that back to real life encounters and transformations? So 1/4 of ORU now is online, and I watch over that area to try to steer it, forward. But I think the issue of social media influencers, I think, is so key because, we can't pay enough marketing. We need word of mouth, right? And we need to go viral, and we do need to build a large brand of impact in the world of God's healing and all that. But we need to do it with people, and we need to do it out there with the global church, right? So I'm really attracted, Walker, to what you've presented, and I want to, thank Jonathan and Aqueduct Project for what you've brought today. It's been, highly illuminating. Want to keep in touch with everybody. Appreciate it.
Can I just tag onto that, Jay? So our daughter, she's represented and she does well. AdSense, Google AdSense is, probably 5 to 10% of her income, but so it's primarily just brand placement and brand representation and so on and so forth. And so that's why she's represented, and whatever little product, she gets $5,000 to $10,000 for a 30-second product placement in a video. And she can't do that all the time. So there's all that dance of when, how often do you do that? You don't want to oversaturate your audience and kind of turn off your fan base. It would seem to me, Jay, with any university of any size, with any alumni base, you got to go out there and say, okay, who in our database are the social, who's got a following, can you, ask them to do a little, promo or a couple of shouts outs or pay, like in my daughter's case, it seems to me you've got to have a huge number of people with large reaches. You just got to go find them and kind of open up that gateway.
We just brought Phil Cook on board in a media, not only advisory role, but an implementation role. Not a lot of you know Phil Cook as a communicator. Yeah. So we're bending that direction. And but how do we affect tenure? All the issues, Walker, you're putting, how does this affect the way talent innovation and talent generation for the future of the church and the future of theological education? I think that's the key question. And the pen used to be the prophet. Now it's a social influencer, right? And how do we cultivate the quality of that talent? So
we'll wrap things up in a moment or two. Any final comments?
Let me say this. I'm so grateful for all of you. It's wonderful to be connected in the kingdom, to see people that I've never met. I've never met any of you. My trails that I follow have not allowed me to cross your paths. But please know that this is inspirational, because we have a great king to serve, and we have a great mission to accomplish. And I'm just so delighted. I'm hoping that you all list how to contact you and what your ministries are, because I've heard each of you say things that I'm desperately interested in knowing about. So if we keep that kind of a list, if you're doing that, Jonathan, that would be a great plus for me to be able to just a casual contact, but to just make contact with each of you as persons. I'm so pleased, and I'm very grateful. I really wondered why in the world you would want to get an old geezer on something so significant and important as this, but I'm grateful that you invited me. And I'm going to be delighted in following and seeing how this moves forward. And, I plan to make it a point to be sure that the administration hears about this conversation at our school. They may already be doing things like this. I live in a little bubble working with doctoral students. So maybe they are already doing some wonderful things like this that I don't even know about. So, but God bless each of you for the significant ministries He's entrusted to you. I am blessed today to know my brothers in the kingdom.
Praise God. Michael, we invited you because we have a deep conviction that the church will outlive the rise and fall of Instagram. So thank you for coming. Our final comment is how grateful we are, Walker, for your work.